my mother went to see the nun in Carlow that was teaching me in the Presentation Convent in Carlow, and we had a discussion how I was very unhappy in my home life, and the nun came up with this great idea that I would go to a school in New Ross and I would get my education and that I would do very well there. So within, I think, days, the arrangements was made for me to go to New Ross. I took my school books and everything with me, but that was the last I ever seen of them.
You were 12 at the time?
I was 12 at the time.
Now, tell me the background to your story. Why did your mother believe that you were unhappy?
Well, I was unhappy. We didn't have a very good home life.
What was unhappy about your home life?
Yeah. Well, my mother was remarried. There was a second family.
Okay, you don't really want to talk about that particular background.
No.
Okay. So at the age of 12, you went into a Magdalene Laundry, which
correct.
was run by the Good Shepherd Sisters in New Ross.
That's correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences in this place?
Well, the experience, the first day that I went in there, I knew there was something wrong when I couldn't understand that why was I being shown around a laundry, and why was the farmer, the man that worked on the farm, measuring me and to make a box for me to stand on so that I could reach up to the calendar where you do the sheets, where the sheets go in to be ironed. I just couldn't understand why all this was happening. My name was taken from me and I was given a different name. I was given the name Francis. And then I was taken over that evening and showed where I was going to sleep, and I met some young girls, but I was told I wasn't to talk to them, that they were very bold girls. And then when I was brought down to the Magdalene Laundry the next morning to work, I was told not to talk to the elderly ladies there, that they were Magdalenes and I wasn't to speak to them. So I found it very frightening. I didn't know what was happening to me. If you burnt your hand or anything and you complained about it, you never got a bit of cream or no sympathy, or you just had to go to bed in that pain and you wouldn't sleep. You'd be very tired the next morning. Many a time I'd wet the bed because I didn't know what was happening to me, and you'd be brought back over to carry the mattress around the yard to make sure it got dry.
And what was daily life like in this place?
It was horrible, just horrible. You never had a conversation with anybody. You weren't allowed to talk to nobody. You weren't allowed to communicate. It was just horrible. Work, work, work. Up till 5 o'clock you had your tea, and then after that was work again. It was doing rosary beads and iron sweaters till about 8 o'clock at night.
What time did they get you up in the morning at?
I'd say it was about 5.
5 o'clock in the morning?
I often heard a nun saying, come on, it's 5 o'clock.
And would you start working from early on in the morning?
I'd start working some mornings that even put polishers under your feet. There were a little bit of blankets, and you'd polish the corridors before you'd even get anything to eat.
And then you were taken down to this large laundry area where you were expected to wash laundry.
No, I didn't wash. What I done was that there was 2 women sorting out the sheets. You picked up the sheets and you put it through a great big steam a calendar, they used to call it, a roller, yeah. And you had to put them through that. It was very hot. It was humiliating. It was really horrible. And you could barely reach. And if you said you spoke and just said, look, I'm not able to reach, I have a pain in my arm, you got no sympathy. More than likely you got a thump. I often got a thump for just saying, look, my arm is sore, I'm not able to do this. Because all the women in the laundry were older than I were. I was only the youngest there.
Yeah, you were 12 at the time,
I was 12
of course.
at the time. There was nobody else 12 there.
And you said that you were told you couldn't talk to the older women, but I presume you were saying older, but they would still, of course, have been very young, I presume.
They were old to me, they were older.
They were old to you?
Yeah.
But, you know, what ages were they? Late teens, early 20s?
Yeah, and 30s. And there was some very old.
Who had been there all their
lives,
for all of their adult lives.
Right.
So how many women were in this laundry, working in the laundry every day, can you remember?
I'd say, looking back now, and I often get the picture back on it, I'd say about maybe 30, 40.
It was a large place.
Yes, oh yes, yeah.
And where did the laundry come from?
It came from the hotels. came from all priests' houses all around, restaurants. Because in them days, you see, they used to use the white tablecloths in restaurants.
Yes. And the nuns were obviously making money out of this.
Oh, yes, yeah.
And Mary, over time, though, did you begin to speak to the other women? Presumably you started to have some communication with the other women.
Well, the odd time you could get to talk, there was a lady said to me one day, you know, I can't understand. She said, why you're here, you're only a child. And that woman, I never seen her after that. She was kept away from me. And she told me, she said, I got into trouble over talking to you. So you just were afraid, you were frightened to talk.
And did your mother ever come back to visit you in this place?
Yes, my mother did come back to visit me, and they told me previous that morning that my mother was coming to see me. And I happened to make one big mistake. I said that I was going to tell my mother that I wasn't going to school, and I got very badly thumped into the stomach and was told that I wouldn't tell my mother that I wasn't going to school, and my visit was supervised. So I couldn't get to speak to my mother on her own.
And how long did you spend there altogether?
Nearly 2 years. And they were closing down, started to close down, and then we were sent, had to go to a laundry in a Thai. I wasn't allowed to come back. I asked to go back to school. And I did have an importance on my education, and so did my mother. And I think that's when my mother got her first shock, was when I said I never went to school in Ross, that I worked in the laundry. And then Sister Veronica told me, she said, you can't come back here and you can't say that you were in Ross.
And we, you know, through the various films that have been made of Magdalene Laundries, we have been able to get a sense of just how cruel the nuns were and
Very
the awful
Yeah.
brutality towards the women. Did you suffer that sort of cruelty?
I did, yes. Yeah, undressing, you were watched. Dressing, you couldn't go in to wash your teeth, wash your hands, but they were watching you, passing terrible remarks on you.
These are the nuns?
Yeah, degrading you all the time. Every chance they got, they degraded you.
And what do you know were the stories of the other women there, some of the other younger women? I know they would have been older than you. What do you know about the circumstances that led them to end up in the Magdalene Laundry?
Well, I was polishing the floor one day and a girl told me, she said, we were confused about you because you're so young. She says, we're here because we have babies. What confused me was, where was the babies? And I said, oh, where are they? And she started to laugh. So I didn't get the story. She didn't get to tell me exactly where the babies was gone. But I started to think different things for myself. There was something very wrong here. It was a very unhappy place. Everyone was so unhappy in it.
Would the nuns, did they abuse you physically, sexually?
No, none ever abused me sexually, no. Physically and mentally, yes.
Psychological abuse was a big part of the Magdalene Laundries.
That's right, yeah.
Steve O'Riordan, the documentary maker of The Forgotten Maggies, from your own research, what were the main reasons why women ended up? Was it principally because they were unmarried mothers?
Okay, first and foremost, I want to categorically state that only some of the women who ended up there had children out of wedlock. The majority of the women that ended up there were put in by solicitors, Garda officers, the nuns, the priests, the local authorities, the government, their brothers, their sisters, their aunts, their uncles, their whole family. It was a network. This was a network of a whole society coming together to deny these women their right and their liberty. I mean, their whole freedom was taken away from them, and even from the point of, I suppose, some people say, oh, they just did laundry, or they just spent their life in there. If you spent your life in an institution, and if you were told while you were in that institution that you were nothing, that you were nobody, that you would never amount to anything in your life, you will continue to go on in your life to think that you are nobody. And the people that you meet in your everyday living after that, you will always see yourself as nobody because you're trying to match yourself up to them.